Now, we have cameras around the country this morning. First, let's head out to Dun Laoghaire in Dublin, where Derek is standing by. Morning, Derek.
Yes, a very good morning, Mark. Well, it literally is the calm before the virtual storm. Eerily quiet here in Dun Laoghaire Harbour in South County Dublin as ex-hurricane Ophelia, and let me stress it is an ex-hurricane, now enters our cooler Irish waters as a post-tropical storm just off the County Kerry coastline. Now, what are we expecting today? Well, we've got driving rain, we've got severe gale force to violent storm force, hurricane force winds, tipping 12 on the Beaufort scale. That is as far as we can go, and coupled with that we have a severe storm surge bringing with it a huge risk of coastal flooding for parts of the west to south and into eastern parts. I'll have full storm updates, and as you mentioned there, we have our reporters dotted right around the country over the next 3.5 hours. But for now, back to you in studio, Mark.
Now we'll take the news with Michael.
Yes, Aidan, as Paul Byrne mentioned there at the top of the hour, the entire country on lockdown this Monday morning. High status red alert now for all 32 counties as ex-hurricane Ophelia, and let me stress it is an ex-hurricane, now enters our Irish waters as an extra tropical storm. Now, what can we expect over the next 12 to 24 hours? Well, we did flag it last week as a Category 1 hurricane off the Azores, and it has tracked and was upgraded to a Category 3 hurricane yesterday morning by the National Hurricane Centre in Miami in Florida. It was downgraded yesterday afternoon to a Category 2, and it is now entering our Irish waters, as I mentioned there, as an extra tropical storm just off the County Kerry coastline. So what can we expect in terms of rainfall? Well, we are looking at falls of up to and in between 2 to 3 inches. That is 50 to 75 millimetres for parts of the west, Munster and into Leinster. For some isolated spots, we are looking at 4 inches of rain. That is 100 millimetres. In terms of winds, we are looking at up to and in between 100 to 130, possibly even gusts there of 140 miles an hour as we reach violent storm force there on the Beaufort scale. And coupled with that, we do have that powerful storm surge in behind us for many parts of the west, the south and into the east. So really, we are looking at a high risk of coastal flooding because of those winds. Once again, we are looking at flying debris, so do take extra care. This is not a drill, and do stay safe over the next 12 to 24 hours. So that is your weather for now. Of course, we do have our reporters dotted right around the country, and we'll have live updates right across the morning.
Quote. Right, let's find out what's happening and get the latest from Derek Hartigan. He's in Dun Laoghaire this morning. Derek, what do you know? What's happening?
Yes, Mark, well, we're live here in Dun Laoghaire in South County Dublin. It's just beginning to brighten up, and I can feel the winds now picking up ever so slightly. That is a sign that ex-hurricane Ophelia, as I mentioned, it is a post-tropical storm, is now entering our Irish waters. Now, it was a Category 3 yesterday, downgraded to a Category 2, and as I mentioned there, it is a post-tropical storm just now entering off the southwest County Kerry coastline. Now, it is also veering slightly in terms of direction. The counties now in the direct firing line of the storm include Galway, Mayo, County Sligo and into County Donegal. So they will be directly hit. As we mentioned there in the last hour, the entire country is on status red alert. We're expecting some driving heavy rain, and coupled with that, we have severe gale force, hurricane force type winds. We're tipping 12 on the Beaufort scale. That is as far as we can go today. So really is a case, Mark, of batten down the hatches. Storm Ophelia is going to hit really hard.
OK, Derek, in terms of, obviously Dun Laoghaire is a working port. Have any of the authorities there said anything to you? Is everything sort of wrapped up tight there?
Yes, Mark. Well, here in Dun Laoghaire, it is eerily quiet at the moment. We had a couple of joggers out here earlier on this morning. But if you can see here behind me, normally this harbour is a hive of activity, normally full of boats, possibly fishermen heading out for the morning catch. But we've had a look around here. There isn't really a boat in sight. All we can see really is the RNLI, the lifeguard boat here, is on standby. And of course, they will be on standby across many ports and harbours and across the coast right across the day.
Thank you very much. That's Derek Hartigan, who, of course, we will be hearing from throughout the course of the morning. Now, John.
Yes, Michael, well, conditions have completely changed quite dramatically now in the last half hour or so as ex-hurricane Ophelia now lands in as a post-tropical storm. As Paul Byrne mentioned there in his report, we have plenty of trees, plenty of power lines already down, and we are looking at around 6,000 homes without power into parts of Cork, Kerry and into County Donegal. Now, in terms of the storm, this is where we're at the moment. The eye of the storm has currently tilted to the west, so the main counties in the firing line include Kerry, into Clare, Galway, Mayo, Sligo and into parts of Donegal, but the entire country remains on high red alert over the next 12 to 14 hours. In terms of rainfall, we are looking at about 2 to 3 inches. That is 50 to 75 millimetres for parts of Connacht, Munster and into parts of Leinster. For some isolated spots, we are looking at about 4 inches. That is 100 millimetres. Now, in terms of winds, they really are the main feature today. They are strong to gale force severe at times. They are reaching force 10 on the Beaufort scale, though, so that is hurricane style winds here, and that as far as we can go in terms of wind measurement. And coupled with that, we do have that storm surge which is beginning to build, and as I mentioned there in reports, that will lead to a risk of localised coastal flooding for parts of the East, Munster and here into parts of Leinster. So really is batten down the hatches over the next 12 hours, and we'll have the latest updates here from Dun Laoghaire on the half hour.
And you're very welcome back. Now let's go to Derek for the latest in Dun Laoghaire this morning. Hello, Derek.
Yes, good morning, Claire. It is beginning to get quite violent now. As you can see here behind me, the waves crashing against the rock, and there really is quite a powerful sea surge coming in behind it. Now, that is going to have huge implications later on as the storm travels northwards across the country. We will be looking at a high risk of coastal flooding for parts of Leinster, Munster and in across parts of the west into Connacht. Now, again, the winds, as we mentioned earlier on, Claire, they really are the main feature, and they have picked up massively now in the last even 15 to 20 minutes or so. We're talking gusts up to and in between 110 to 140, possibly even 150 kilometres per hour. And as Mark mentioned earlier on, that's strong enough to sweep a car away. We've already had to tell people to come in back off the pier. People were here taking photos, and I literally had to say, guys, come back in. It is quite a danger. So please, the advice is to stay away from coastal areas. This is not a drill, and it is here to stay with us over the next 10 to 12 hours.
And I mean, as you said, there's people out and about, so do get in, stay safe, stop taking pictures and do be careful. Derek, are you seeing less people? Earlier on today you said there were people running and you can see people down on the pier. Are people starting to heed it now that the wind is picking up?
Yes, I think so, Claire. Earlier on this morning, we did have a couple of runners out. As I mentioned, there is still a couple of people now walking along the prom here in Dun Laoghaire Pier. But really, that warning is in place. It's a status red alert for all counties right across the country here today. As I mentioned, the eye of the storm has slightly shifted west, Claire. So the main counties in the firing line really are going to be Galway, Mayo, into Sligo and in across counties Donegal. The main storm is supposed to hit us in and around 1 o'clock today, and that is going to travel northwards across the country. So the main advice is to stay very safe. Of course, we already have plenty of trees down and power lines down, as you heard Paul Byrne mentioned there in his report, and we are once again looking at structural damage, and our advice to motorists really is stay off the roads as well as cyclists.
But we have no reports as of yet on the East Coast that there are any power outages. Is that right, Derek?
Yes, that is correct, Claire. We have no reports of power outages here on the East Coast as of yet. About 5,000 to 6,000 in across Cork, Kerry and into Donegal, mainly into Bishopstown and across Ballincollig. We've about 1,500 there in across Cork without power already, but nothing in terms of power-wise or in terms of power outages to report here on the East Coast.
And what about emergency services in the area? You did say the Coast Guard was on standby earlier on when you were down at the pier. That still remains the same?
Yes, Claire, that is the situation at the moment. The Irish Coast Guard is on high alert. I'm just looking across the harbour there and I can see the RNLI boat is parked up and it is ready for action if needs be. Now it is, as I mentioned this morning, quite eerie here in Dun Laoghaire Harbour. It's normally full packed with boats, but all the boats have been tied away. A lot of them have actually been taken out of the harbour and been stowed away either at their own premises away here from the harbour. But it really is blowing again. We're expecting those winds to pick up right across the afternoon. As I mentioned, 110 to 140, possibly even 150 kilometres per hour.
There are a lot of businesses online saying they are closed, Dun stores, Pennies. Do you know of any local businesses there? I assume many of them will be closed as people heed the warning to stay in.
Well, Claire, as I was coming down here this morning, I did see notices that Blackrock here and Monkstown were open for business. Now, it is very, very quiet here around the town. To be honest, I haven't seen many people out and about. There isn't much traffic on the road, so people are really tuned in. People are listening to the warning to stay off work. Of course, all schools, universities, creches and Montessori's are closed for today. A lot of businesses are closed. Now, I don't know the exact story here in Dun Laoghaire, but as we understand, the college here in Dun Laoghaire is closed.
Thank you very much and stay safe yourself there, Derek. Now, our Midwest reporter Eric Clark is live for us in Limerick City. So, Eric, what's it looking like down there at the moment?
Yes, Michael, it's beginning to get quite violent here in Dun Laoghaire in South County Dublin as ex-Hurricane Ophelia now lands into our southern coast as a post-tropical storm. As you heard there with both Paul and Eric, we now have trees and power lines down. About 5,000 people without power in across counties, Cork, Kerry and into parts of Donegal. The very latest here from Irish Ferries is that the ferry crossings from Dublin to Holyhead on both the Ulysses and the Swift have now been cancelled until further notice. Now, in terms of the storm, this is where we're at the moment. The eye of the storm has currently shifted to the west, so it's now tracking up along the west coast. So the main counties mainly in the eye of the storm include Cork, Kerry, Clare, Mayo, Galway, into Sligo and of course Donegal. In terms of rain, we're looking at 2 to 3 inches. That's 50 to 75 millimetres. For some isolated spots, we're looking at about 4 inches. That's about 100 millimetres. But the main feature really is those winds. We have severe gale force, violent storm, possibly even hurricane force style winds here today. As Deborah mentioned earlier, we're talking wind speeds there 110 up to 140, possibly even 150 kilometres per hour. So coupled with all that, we have a real violent storm surge on the way, and of course we are looking at fallen debris and of course structural damage. But we will of course have another update here in the next half hour or so stay with us for that.
Now, Derek is still in Dun Laoghaire, where I believe it's quite blustery. What is the latest there, Derek?
Yes, Aidan, it's getting quite violent here now in Dun Laoghaire in South County Dublin. The wind's really picking up pace right across the morning. That's a sign that ex-Hurricane Ophelia has now landed on our shores. The very latest, as Mark mentioned there, the loose services have been cancelled, and of course the latest from Irish Ferries is that the crossings from Dublin to Holyhead on both the Swift and the Ulysses have been cancelled until further notice. Now, the wind speeds really here, Aidan, are the main feature right across the day. We're looking at severe gale force to violent storm hurricane force at times. We're tipping 12 on the Beaufort scale. That is as far as we can go in terms of wind speeds, and we're looking at gusts up to and in between 110 to 140, possibly even 150 kilometres per hour.
Derek, we can see people walking behind you despite the fact that there are warnings everywhere to say stay in, do not go out. Yet people disregard these warnings, and that obviously is up to themselves, but it is quite silly. But is there a fear and a danger that this water is going to come up over and into the streets?
Yes, Aidan. Well, as I mentioned there, the storm surge is quite strong, and the spray has been coming up here over the coast wall, especially in the last half hour or so. Now, there are still plenty of people out and about. I pass people going for their morning runs, and there's people out going for the stroll. But there still is, would you believe it or not, people coming out to take photographs here by the coast. And the message is from the Irish Coast Guard to stay away from the coast. Don't go anywhere near it, especially to take anything like photographs or anything like that. Get away from the coast and don't put your life in danger.
All right, we know this is only the beginning, that the eye of it, or the crucial part of the day, is going to be after 1 o'clock today. So you would imagine that people, maybe they're out having a look now, but will they be wise enough to get indoors when those serious winds arrive?
Yes, Aidan. Well, as we mentioned there, the storm is going to hit at about 1 o'clock later on today. Now, we mentioned earlier on the Ida storm has drifted slightly to the west. So the main counties affected there, as we mentioned in our weather report, will be Galway, Mayo, into Sligo and County Donegal. But that status red weather alert in place for the entire country for the remainder of the day. So it really is a case of battening down the hatches. And I'll tell you, Aidan, one of the main problems really in behind it is the storm surge. We're looking at coastal flooding, a high possibility now for parts of the east to south and into Munster, along with structural damage and, of course, fallen debris as well as power lines down. So the main message really is to stay indoors and stay safe.
All right, Derek, thank you very much. Derek's in Dun Laoghaire, of course. TV3 will be keeping up to date on Ophelia's movements throughout the day. The news at 12:30 will be live here on TV3, followed later by news special from 3 to 4 this afternoon. In addition to the 5:30 bulletin, 3 News will also air a live special programme tonight here on TV3 at 8 p.m.
Thank you both for joining us. Well, our TV3 weather presenter Derek O'Hartigan joins me live now in studio. Derek, how bad is this storm?
Siobhan, you know what? It's time we got serious about this storm and stop fluffing around. This is really a major storm in terms of its size and capability, given the fact it's the 8th consecutive hurricane in the Atlantic storm season, and of course the strongest hurricane that has tracked this far east ever. So we flagged it last Thursday on Ireland AM, and this is the development really, as you can see on the graphic. It kick-started as Category 1 hurricane off the Azores last Thursday. It's been tracking in a northeasterly direction. Now, at the moment, it's located about 200 miles southwest off the County Cork coastline off Mizen Head, and it is moving at about 35 miles an hour. Now, it's going to transition tonight into tomorrow morning into what's called an extratropical storm. So it's not going to hit as a hurricane, but as a tropical storm, but we're going to see very high winds and a big storm surge.
So now what can we expect over the next 24 to 48 hours? So as you heard there with Jerry, we do have that status red alert in place for counties Mayo, Galway into Limerick, Clare, down across Cork, Kerry into Waterford and Wexford. Rainfall, we're looking at about 2 to 3 inches. So that's 50 to 75 millimetres in some areas. In isolated spots, we're looking at 4 inches. That's 100 millimetres. And coupled with that, those winds are going to be very, very strong, gusting up to about 110 to 130 miles an hour. So really is batten down the hatches. There's a big storm on the way. Derek O'Hartigan, thank you very much for joining us. Other news now. A 27-year-old man has died after being struck by an SUV in Dublin in the early hours. Welcome back to this 3 News special. Well, TV3 weather presenter Derek O'Hartigan joins us now. So where is Storm Ophelia right now, Derek? All right, Colette. So we're progressing now ever so slightly as that storm works its way up the west coast. We saw there with Fergal in Galway. It's just past now Galway City, and it is edging up into parts of Northern Connacht in across the northwest, and this is where it will be located now over the next couple of hours. So counties in the firing line at the moment include Mayo into parts of Sligo and up across into County Donegal. Now at 11:08 this morning we did have a record gust. It's 191 kilometres per hour that was recorded off Fastnet Rock. That's about 13 miles off the County Cork coastline. And as I said earlier on, we still have all this storm surge to deal with. So we could be looking at a continued risk of localised spot flooding into eastern, southern and western coastal counties as we approach high tide in some areas. And Derek, is it the rain or is it how severe the winds are that are of most concern to you?
Well, it really is the winds at this stage. Of course, we can't rule out the rain. We're looking at 2 to 3 inches in some spots. Colette, that's 50 to 75 millimetres. In some isolated areas, we're looking at 4 inches, so that's 100 millimetres of rain. So that still is an issue. We can't forget about it. But it really is the winds that are the main feature. They are strong to gale force, severe storm force winds, now tracking northwards across the country. So we may think that the worst of it is gone across southern sections. That wind has eased back. We are looking at gale force, strong gale force there across southern sections. But now the bulk of the wind coming from a westerly direction. It is strong, severe gale force. As I mentioned earlier on, we're tipping 12 on the Beaufort scale. This is as high as we can go in terms of wind speed. So there still is a major problem into parts of northern Connacht and up into Ulster as the storm tracks in a northerly direction.
And Derek, you can't underestimate the type of damage those winds can cause. We've seen some of the pictures on social media. It has ripped the roof literally almost off Turner's Cross in Cork City, for example.
Absolutely. We saw those pictures from Paul Byrne down in Cork, Turner's Cross, Cork City Football Club. Also the gym there, we saw it of Douglas Community School. That roof absolutely blown off, and if you slow it down in detail, it lifted about 50 to 70 metres in the air. So we have lots of structural damage. We have about 360,000 households and businesses now without power. The ESB networks are saying this is exceeding Storm Darwin from 3 years ago.
All right, Derek, thank you very much for that. Well, Claire Brock is standing by in the newsroom with more updates on the impact of Storm Ophelia as it crosses the country. Claire. Well, let's find out where the storm is tracking right now, because TV3 weather presenter Derek Cartigan is with us in studio. So what's happening right at the moment, Derek?
Absolutely, Colette. Well, as of 5:45 to 6 this evening, the storm is now barreling its way right up the northwestern coast of the country at the moment. It's feeding up across counties Mayo, Sligo and into Donegal. We're still looking at severe hurricane force gusts up to about 110, 150 kilometres per hour. Now, at 11:08 a.m. this morning, we had that top recorded gust of 191 kilometres there off Fastnet Rock. That is 30 miles off the County Cork coastline. And do not forget, Colette, we're still dealing with that rain. We have 2 to 3 inches in some areas. That's 50 to 75 millimetres. In isolated spots, we are looking at 100 millimetres of rain. That is 4 inches. Now, in behind it, we have the storm tracking northwards across the country. But as we were speaking about earlier, we do have these sting jets. Now, these are going to cause a massive problem right across into tonight, into tomorrow morning. We're still looking at gusts there at about 100 to 110 kilometres per hour.
All right, Derek, thank you very much for that. And that's it from this special 3 News at 5:30. We're going to have bulletins at 7 o'clock and 10 o'clock over on B3, and another special programme on the storm at 8 o'clock here on TV3. Until then, have a very good evening and stay safe. And the storm has already claimed 2 lives. A woman has died in County Waterford after part of a tree fell on her car, and a man has been killed in County Tipperary. Elsewhere, tens of thousands are without power, and the country has ground to a virtual halt. Well, TV3 weather presenter Derek Cartigan joins us now. So where is the storm at right now, Derek, and where is it going to go over the coming hours?
Well, Colette, we saw the eye of the storm pass over Valentia Observatory at 1:32 p.m. earlier on this afternoon in Kerry. At the moment, it is working its way, barreling up the west coast at a rate of 35 miles per hour. As you saw there with Fergal O'Brien, it's just hitting parts of Galway into southern Mayo now, and it's tracking up along the west coast into northwestern areas, hitting parts of Sligo and parts of Donegal as it tracks in a northerly direction.
So the worst is yet to come over the coming hours?
The worst is yet to come. Really what we're seeing here on the map is the winds across southern parts are now going to moderate back to gale force or extreme gale force. But this is where the problem does lie. Up across the western parts where you saw Fergal there and across South Salthill and Galway, the winds are now veering to the west. So they're picking up. Once again, we're looking at storm force, severe gale force. Force 12 on the Beaufort scale. This is as far as we can go in terms of wind speeds, and that's set to stay with us now right across this afternoon and into this evening.
And Derek, is there any part of the country that this storm has yet to touch, or it won't touch at all, or is the entire country affected by this?
No, absolutely, Colette. The entire... don't be fooled by this. We thought it was an hurricane. This is a tropical storm. It's got all the characteristics of a hurricane, and the entire country is on full red alert as we speak. Now, take a look here at the wind speeds. As we mentioned there, the wind's beginning to ease off, Colette, ever so slightly across southern sections. But as we work our way up through the country, this is where those wind speeds picking up once again. And do not forget, we have the sting in the tail. This is where we think once it's died down, it's all over. But no, we have the sting in the tail, those jet winds picking up, and they're going to pick up to about 81 kilometres per hour off those southeastern coastal counties. So still a lot to come over the next couple of hours.
And Derek, gusts are going to reach up to what, 150, maybe 160 kilometres an hour in some places, particularly up against that western seaboard.
Absolutely. Like, we remember back to some of the bigger storms in years gone by. This is as big as what we've seen Storm Darwin a couple of years ago, where we saw the roof of the boathouse on the banks of the River Shannon in Limerick being blown off. And of course, we had Storm Charlie back in the 25th of August in 1986. We're talking wind speeds as strong as this. This isn't a drill, Colette. This is live weather as it's happening, and it's still quite powerful and will stay with us over the next couple of hours.
We had a minister on radio saying this is literally a matter of life and death. And as we heard earlier in the programme, Storm Ophelia has already claimed 2 lives. Is there a sense, Derek, that people maybe weren't taking this as seriously as they should have, perhaps up until last night?
No, I think once the emergency coordination group got themselves together yesterday morning, of course, they had that meeting at 10:30 a.m. And I think from there, then that's when the message started to drill out. Of course, here in TV3, we've been drilling out the message since last Thursday into Friday, when it developed as a hurricane off the Azores as a Category 1, and of course it barreled its way up in a northeasterly direction, and it did literally transfer into a post-tropical storm overnight last night, and this is where we're at the moment. But I think people are heeding the warnings. Of course, I was out this morning where Rory Carroll is at the moment out in Dun Laoghaire, and I saw people jumping the barriers. The harbour, the pier is now closed. I saw people jumping the barriers. I saw people going for a swim out in Sea Point. We also had emergency services having to rescue 2 kite surfers as well in Blackrock. So people are heeding the warnings, but of course you always have the risk takers who want to get out in the middle of the storm to get some footage, to get some photos. But the message is to stay away, stay high and stay dry.
I heard one minister say this morning, thrill tourism. Everyone wants to get that dramatic picture and that selfie of the 12-foot high waves, and it's insanity.
Absolutely, but we saw some dramatic footage coming there from Cork, down in Douglas Community School, where we saw the roof of the gym being absolutely lifted off and blown, as Paul mentioned there, about 50 metres in the air. We also have reports of structural damage to the roof of the Radisson here in Dublin, in Golden Lane. So plenty of that kind of activity, plenty of structural damage. And of course, we're looking at fallen debris as well, those branches from the tree. And if you are on those roads, swerving cars and motorways, it's going to be a huge problem over the next couple of hours.
All right, Derek, you're going to stay with us, because we're going to stay on air and we're going to be tracking Storm Ophelia as it cuts right across the country until 7 o'clock. So Derek, stay with us. Stay with us also, lots more to come. Minister Owen Murphy will be with us after the break.